I spoke this psalm of wealth flood in my life, and the very heavens seemed to open their gates. For words are not idle sounds, they are living seeds, carrying within them the very pattern of the harvest they will bring forth. When I declared the truth of abundance, I aligned myself with the eternal law of supply. I ceased to look to men, circumstances, or chance for my prosperity, and I turned instead to the unfailing source, the great river of life that flows through all creation. The world will tell you of limitation, of lack, of narrow doors and closed gates. But Spirit whispers a different song. It says, "All that is mine is thine. The fields are white with harvest. The floodgates of good are open, and you may drink without measure." When I spoke this psalm, I placed myself in harmony with that law. And harmony always brings demonstration. Wealth is not merely coins and possessions, it is the radiant energy of life made visible. It is the health in your body, the love in your heart, the ideas that open new doors, the opportunities that come at the appointed time. Each thought, each word, is a brushstroke painting the canvas of our days. If the picture has been dimmed by shadows of fear, doubt, or resentment, it can be repainted with colors of faith, praise, and thanksgiving. So I spoke, not in trembling hope, but in calm certainty. For the psalm of wealth is not a plea, it is a proclamation. It does not ask, it announces. It does not beg, it declares. And what is declared with conviction is written into the substance of life, and must appear. I spoke of rivers overflowing, of treasures laid up, of barns filled to bursting, and of cups running over. I spoke as one who already possessed, not as one reaching out in desperation. For the law answers faith, not fear. Faith sees the invisible and calls it forth. Fear clings to appearances and shuts the very door it seeks to open. Thus, the psalm of wealth flood is a song of fearless possession. I am rich in every good and perfect gift. All that I need is mine now, and more is always on the way. The moment I spoke this psalm, doors opened where there had been walls. Paths cleared where once there were thorns. What seemed impossible yesterday unfolded with ease today. For life reshapes itself around the word, and the word, when charged with truth, cannot fail. I say unto you, speak your psalm. Let your words be rivers of gold, flowing freely, without doubt or hesitation. Declare the plenty that already exists in the unseen, and watch as it floods into the seen. The wealth of life is infinite, and the flood cannot be held back when you give it voice. Words are not mere vibrations in the air, nor fleeting sounds that vanish the moment they are spoken. Words are living seeds, each one carrying within itself the shape of its harvest. As a seed of wheat will always bring forth wheat and not thorns, so too does every word spoken bring forth after its own kind. To speak words of wealth is to plant seeds of wealth, and the soil of life, ever obedient, cannot fail to bring them into form. It does not matter whether one understands the depth of this mystery. The law operates regardless, just as gravity does not wait for the mind to comprehend it. Words are power, for they clothe thought in vibration, and send it forth to accomplish that which was declared. When the lips give utterance to words of prosperity, they imprint upon the invisible substance the very image of abundance. The universe does not recognize idle speech, it accepts every word as a decree and sets forces in motion accordingly. To say, I am rich in every good thing, is to command life to align itself with that truth. To say, I am poor, I never have enough, is likewise to command life, and it will echo back lack upon lack. Words are not neutral, they are creative commands. They call forth the form of our experiences and sculpt the conditions of our days. The careless word and the deliberate word are equally seeds. Only one brings a harvest of joy, while the other yields thistles and brambles. Consider the way a gardener treats the seed. He plants it with care, covers it gently, waters it, and trusts that beneath the soil unseen processes are at work. He does not dig it up the next morning in fear to see if it has sprouted, nor does he scold the earth to hurry its process. He knows the law of growth is faithful. Likewise, when words of wealth are spoken, they are planted in the fertile soil of the unseen. They may not at once spring forth in visible demonstration, but beneath the surface, Forces are moving, channels are being opened, and results are germinating. The wise soul plants good words with care and waters them with faith, refusing to uproot them with words of doubt or fear. Every word spoken is vibrational substance that travels outward and returns multiplied. The declaration, "I live in a flood of wealth," is not only sound, it is an energetic mold into which the very life force flows. Life is compelled to fill the mold with corresponding substance. Words of plenty are molds for plenty. Words of scarcity are molds for scarcity. The law is impartial, it simply mirrors back the pattern impressed upon it. Therefore, the tongue holds the key to gates of treasure or doors of emptiness. One may blame fate, luck, or other men. But the truth remains that the harvest follows the seed, and the seed is spoken word. There are those who speak wealth once and then cancel it 10 times with words of fear. They say, "I am prosperous," but then add, "though I doubt it will last," or "money never stays with me." Such contradiction uproots the seed. The soil cannot bring forth both roses and weeds from the same seed bed. It must yield according to the stronger impression. To make words of wealth effective, they must be consistent, clear, and charged with conviction. Repetition establishes depth, conviction adds power. Words spoken with authority sink deep into the subconscious, and the subconscious, being obedient, sets about to outpicture them. Children are taught to be careful of fire, for it burns whether handled in play or in seriousness. Words, too, are fire. They ignite the very atmosphere with their pattern. Spoken in carelessness, they may scorch; spoken with wisdom, they may warm and illumine. The one who desires the flood of wealth must watch his words as a guardian watches the gate. He must refuse to utter phrases of limitation, lack, or failure. Even in jest, words carry vibration. To laugh while saying, "I am always broke," does not lessen the law's operation. The subconscious does not take a joke, it takes an impression. Thus, the watchful soul keeps his lips pure of contradiction and trains them to speak only what he desires to see. Words spoken in faith are not bound by appearances. To say, "I am wealthy," while the purse seems empty, is to sow a seed that overrides the barren soil of appearances. Appearances are but shadows, the word is substance. A gardener does not call the field barren, because no sprout is yet seen, he trusts the seed. So too must one trust the words spoken. The invisible realm responds first, and the visible follows in its appointed time. Delay does not mean denial. The seed of wealth, once spoken, is alive. And life cannot be withheld from a living seed. Words are not confined to the speaker alone, they go forth to touch others, to move hearts, to open channels. A merchant who declares, "My business is prosperous and ever increasing," is not only impressing his own subconscious, but also sending forth a vibration that draws customers, opportunities, and favor. A worker who says, "I am valued and richly compensated," is opening channels for promotion, recognition, and increase. The spoken word acts like a magnet, drawing unto itself the equivalent of its vibration. Wealth spoken draws wealth in visible channels, sometimes expected, often unexpected. The law delights in surprising the faithful sower with a harvest from fields he did not even know he had planted. The sacred texts of many ages proclaim the power of the word. It has been called a sword, a fire, a hammer, a seed, a creative fiat. All symbols point to the same truth. Words are causative, not descriptive. They are not to merely state what is, they are to declare what shall be. To use words only to echo appearances is to waste their divine power. To use them to decree wealth, health, joy, and abundance is to align oneself with the creative force of life itself. When wealth words are spoken, they do not merely describe prosperity, they summon it, they shape it, they embody it. Thus, the tongue is the true treasury, and the lips are the vault from which wealth is released. The mind may hold images, but until they are spoken, they remain formless. Speech crystallizes thought, and thought clothed in sound becomes law. The one who understands this mystery begins to weigh each word, choosing those that correspond to the riches of life. He knows that every utterance is a seed cast upon the waters, and though it may return after many days, it cannot fail to return. Wealth spoken with confidence, gratitude, and authority carries the vibration of certainty, and certainty brings swift demonstration. Faith opens the floodgates because faith is the master key that unlocks every invisible storehouse. Where doubt seals the door and fear bars the way, faith removes all barriers and swings wide the gates of abundance. Faith is not wishful thinking nor trembling hope. It is the calm assurance that what is unseen is more real than what is seen, that the eternal supply is present and waiting to pour forth at the spoken word. Faith does not consult appearances. It commands appearances to align with truth. To live in faith is to walk already in possession, to speak as one who already has, to act as though the blessing were now, not tomorrow. The floodgates answer only to this authority, and when faith is present, they cannot remain shut. Faith is not earned, bought, or borrowed, it is awakened. It is the inner knowing that there is a power greater than appearances, and that this power responds unfailingly to right thought, right word, and right expectation. Faith is the inner eye that sees rivers of gold flowing though the outer world shows desert sands. Faith is the inner ear that hears the song of abundance though outer voices cry of lack. Faith is the inner hand that touches treasures in the invisible, while outer hands may still be empty. To cultivate such faith is to place oneself in direct alignment with the law of supply, and the law, being exact, must pour forth its flood. The one who wavers, who says in one breath, I am prosperous, and in the next sighs, but I see no increase, is like a man who opens the floodgate one moment and slams it shut the next. Water cannot pour through a gate that is constantly opening and closing. The stream of wealth requires constancy, and constancy is born of faith. Faith holds steady though appearances contradict. Faith continues to speak plenty though pockets appear light. Faith persists in praise though the harvest has not yet appeared above ground. The flood waits on this constancy. For the law of supply responds to unwavering conviction. It is not great effort that opens the floodgates but great trust. Many strive and labor anxiously, thinking they must force results, and in their striving they tighten the very channel through which abundance longs to flow. Faith is rest in action. It works without strain because it knows. The farmer does not wrestle with the soil to make his seeds sprout, he trusts the process. So too does faith trust the unseen processes of life. When words of wealth are spoken with faith, they are released into the substance of life like seeds into the soil. Faith waters them daily with thanksgiving, and the floodgates open in due season. The language of faith is declaration. Faith says, I already have, while fear says, I hope someday I might. Faith says, the doors are open, while fear says, I wonder if they will open. Faith speaks as though the thing desired is already accomplished. For in truth it already is in the invisible. The invisible is the mother of the visible, and what exists there must take form here when faith calls it forth. To speak without faith is to utter empty words. To speak with faith is to decree, and the decree becomes law. Faith charges words with the authority of command, and life rushes to obey. Faith does not measure the size of the flood by the size of the visible channel. Faith knows that channels expand as the flood pours. Many shrink their requests because they measure by appearances. I could never receive that much, or, it seems too large for me. Such limitation shuts the gates. Faith says, there is no limit to supply, and channels will open to meet the size of my declaration. Faith asks boldly and receives without apology. The flood of wealth is infinite, and faith knows no request can exhaust it. Every great demonstration of prosperity begins with a step of faith. To give when appearances say hold back. To speak wealth when appearances say decline. To act in expectation when appearances say wait. These are the acts that open the floodgates. Life honors the courageous soul who dares to trust. To give thanks for unseen wealth is to declare, I know it is already mine. And this gratitude is the signal that unlocks hidden reservoirs. The flood does not respond to anxiety or to timid hoping, it responds to bold, fearless faith. Faith sees divine timing where the anxious see delay. It understands that the floodgates open at the perfect moment, not 1 hour too soon nor too late. Faith trusts the rhythm of life. The one rooted in faith does not despair when manifestations tarry. He knows the flood is gathering strength behind the gates. Just as the river swells behind the dam before rushing forth, so too does unseen supply gather before bursting into visible form. Faith rejoices in advance, knowing the rush is certain. Faith is magnetic. It draws to itself opportunities, ideas, people, and circumstances that align with prosperity. The faithful soul attracts supply because he radiates the vibration of certainty. Others sense it. Doors swing open, and channels appear where none seemed before. Faith does not chase wealth, it magnetizes it. Wealth cannot resist the pull of faith any more than a needle can resist the pull of a magnet. When faith is spoken, acted, and lived, the flood of wealth is inevitable. Faith transforms the consciousness. It shifts the mind from seeing lack to seeing plenty, from expecting loss to expecting gain. This inner shift is the true opening of the floodgates. External wealth is but the reflection of inner wealth. To cultivate faith is to enrich the soil of the mind so that every seed planted grows abundantly. Fear dries the soil and chokes the seed, but faith waters it until it flourishes. Thus, the outer flood of wealth is but the natural outpouring of the inner flood of faith. Wealth is radiant life energy, ever flowing, ever renewing, never diminished by giving or sharing. It is the current of divine substance, expressing itself in form as health, joy, ideas, love, opportunities, and yes, material prosperity. To think of wealth only as coins and possessions is to shrink the vastness of its nature into a narrow vessel. True wealth is the energy of life itself, circulating freely, seeking channels of expression, and multiplying wherever it is welcomed. It is sunlight pouring across the earth, warming rich and poor alike. It is the breath filling every lung, unearned and unlimited. It is the stream that runs through the hidden roots, feeding the tree and clothing it in leaves and fruit. This radiant energy is never absent, though appearances of lack may disguise its flow. It is not created by men, it is the birthright of existence, waiting only for recognition and release. When one says, "I am wealthy," the statement is far greater than a claim of possession. It is in alignment with the eternal stream of energy that animates all life. It is a recognition that wealth is not outside of oneself, to be chased, begged for, or clung to, but within, waiting to radiate outward into visible form. To see wealth as radiant life energy is to free oneself from the narrow fear that supply could ever be exhausted. The fountain of life does not dry up. The sun does not withhold its rays. The universe does not ration its abundance. Wherever life is, wealth is, for the two are inseparable. This radiant energy takes on the shape of consciousness. When the mind is filled with fear, resentment, or doubt, the flow is obstructed, just as a river may be dammed by debris. The water still exists, but its course is blocked. When the mind is filled with praise, gratitude, and expectation, the obstruction is cleared, and the current rushes forth with power. Wealth is not withheld, it is resisted or allowed. The decision is within the individual, for the energy is always present, pressing against the walls of thought, seeking entrance into visible expression. Radiant life energy expresses itself in many forms. It may appear as a sudden idea that opens a profitable path, as a new connection that brings opportunity, as an unexpected gift, or as health and vitality that allow greater service and greater joy. These are all wealth, for wealth is whatever increases life. Money is but one of its expressions, a symbol that carries the energy into practical exchange. To honor money without recognizing the energy behind it is to worship the shadow rather than the light. To honor the energy is to see money, and all other forms of wealth, as natural outpourings of a greater source. Wealth as radiant life energy cannot be hoarded, for hoarding is fear, and fear dams the stream. To attempt to clutch wealth tightly is to cut oneself off from the current that replenishes it. Like air, wealth must be taken in and breathed out again. Like blood, it must circulate. The miser who withholds his wealth, in fear of losing it, finds that it withers in his grasp. The generous soul who lets it flow finds that it multiplies in unexpected ways, returning again and again in greater measure. Circulation is the law of life, and wealth is subject to this same law. The radiant nature of wealth is seen in the joy it brings when it flows freely. There is a lightness, a brightness, an ease in the soul who knows he is one with infinite supply. He gives without strain, receives without guilt, and lives without fear of lack. His very presence radiates assurance, and others are drawn to him, for they sense the energy flowing through him. He becomes a magnet of good, not because he seeks to draw it, but because he cannot help but shine the wealth he embodies. Radiant life energy does not need to struggle to be seen, it shines naturally. This energy is not limited by location, condition, or circumstance. It flows equally in palace or in humble home, for it is not created by outer things, but expressed through inner recognition. A man may live surrounded by luxury and feel impoverished if his consciousness is shut against the flow. Another may live simply yet feel endlessly supplied, for his consciousness is open, and he recognizes the radiant energy in every breath, every opportunity, every gift of life. Wealth is not measured by numbers, but by the sense of abundance that comes from knowing the source is inexhaustible. To awaken to wealth as radiant life energy is to change the entire relationship with supply. No longer does one fear the loss of things, for things are but temporary forms of the eternal energy. No longer does one envy another's possession, for each has equal access to the same current. No longer does one beg or plead for prosperity, for it is already present, waiting to be spoken into form. One begins to live in the consciousness of plenty, seeing life itself as the great treasure, and from this consciousness material blessings naturally arise. This radiant energy is increased by joy, magnified by gratitude, and accelerated by love. Joy opens the heart and the current flows faster. Gratitude clears the channels dissolving doubt and fear. Love multiplies wealth by extending it outward, creating new channels of return. Every smile, every kind word, every act of generosity sends out radiant energy, and the universe returns it pressed down and running over. Thus, wealth is not something to be acquired, but something to be expressed. The more it is expressed, the more it grows, for it is infinite in its nature. The one who lives in awareness of wealth as radiant life energy walks differently through the world. He sees abundance in the sky, in the earth, in every encounter. He expects good at every turn, for he knows the energy cannot fail to manifest in form. He speaks with authority, for his words are charged with the current of life. He acts with confidence, for he knows he is backed by infinite supply. His wealth is not fragile or fleeting, for it is not dependent upon outer structures, but upon the eternal energy of life itself, which can never diminish nor end. Declaration, not supplication, is the law of manifestation. For the universe responds to the voice of authority and conviction, not the cry of pleading. Supplication says, I hope, I wish, I beg that good may come. Declaration says, it is mine now, it is here, it is done. The one who supplicates places himself in the posture of lack, affirming by his very plea that he does not yet have. The one who declares speaks as one in possession, and possession is the key that unlocks the storehouse. Life answers the tone of certainty, not the wail of uncertainty. To plead is to place oneself beneath the flood, hoping for drops. To declare is to stand as one with the flood itself, commanding it into visible form. When one understands the creative power of words, one no longer prays in the language of want, but in the language of fulfillment. Declaration does not ask for supply to come. It affirms that supply already is. Declaration does not stretch hands outward in hope of receiving, it radiates the certainty of already having. Supplication comes from the shadow of fear, declaration from the light of faith. The universe, being exact, reflects back the vibration it receives. A plea vibrates lack, and lack is mirrored. A declaration vibrates abundance, and abundance is mirrored. Thus, every spoken word is not merely sound but decree. Declaration aligns the soul with its divine authority. It is the voice of the child who knows he is heir to the kingdom. It does not cower before appearances, but speaks with the power of truth, knowing appearances must yield. To say, I am prosperous now, when appearances show emptiness, is not folly, it is mastery. It is calling the invisible into visibility. It is claiming what is already true in the higher realm, where supply is complete and unending. To declare is to stand in dominion, exercising the creative power bestowed upon every soul. Supplication weakens the spirit, for it continually reinforces the notion of separation. It says, I do not have, and I must ask another to give. Declaration strengthens the spirit, for it continually reinforces the truth of unity. It says, I am one with infinite supply, and therefore I already have. The subconscious mind accepts repetition as truth, and whichever language one uses, supplication or declaration, it engraves deeply into the unseen. The subconscious then produces in outer life what has been impressed upon it. To plead day after day is to impress lack more deeply. To declare day after day is to impress abundance until it must come forth. Declaration is not arrogance but alignment. To say, I am supplied, I am wealthy, I am filled with good, is not to boast of personal power, but to recognize universal truth. The wave does not apologize for being part of the ocean, it declares its nature as ocean in form. The branch does not beg for sap from the vine. It declares by its very being that the life of the vine flows through it. In the same way, man does not beg for supply from a reluctant universe. He declares that the infinite current of supply is already flowing through him. The words of declaration must be spoken with calm authority, not frantic insistence. The tone of begging, even when dressed as affirmation, carries no power. But the tone of serene certainty carries vibration that moves mountains. Declaration is the voice of the law, and law recognizes itself. When the judge declares, this is the verdict, the court obeys. When the soul declares, this is my supply, life obeys. The authority comes not from the human self alone, but from the alignment with the divine principle of abundance. To declare is to allow that principle to speak through the lips, and its word cannot return void. Supplication leaves the one who prays in the energy of waiting. Waiting stretches time and postpones fulfillment. Declaration collapses time and brings fulfillment into the now. For in truth, all good is already present, only recognition brings it into form. To say, someday I may be prosperous, is to push prosperity endlessly into the future. To say, I am prosperous now, is to draw it into manifestation. The floodgates do not open tomorrow, they open now. Declaration plants the word in the soil of the present, where alone growth can occur. Declaration requires persistence. A single statement may plant the seed, but repetition waters it until it grows strong. The mind must be trained to speak in the language of possession rather than lack. Old habits of supplication may arise, whispering doubt and begging for signs. But each time the soul returns to declaration, it strengthens the new pattern. Over time, the subconscious accepts declaration as law, and the outer life reshapes itself accordingly. The practice of declaration is the steady hammer that breaks the rock of resistance. Declaration transforms atmosphere. Enter a room filled with pleading, and one feels heaviness, want, and despair. Enter a room filled with declaration, and one feels light, assurance, and expectancy. Declaration carries a vibration that others can sense, often without knowing why. Opportunities, people, and circumstances are drawn to the one who declares, for his energy radiates certainty, and certainty is magnetic. Supplication repels, for it radiates lack and fear. Declaration attracts, for it radiates wealth and power. The ancient words spoken in sacred texts are always words of declaration, not pleading. They do not say, please let there be light. They say, let there be light, and light appears. They do not say, I hope this mountain might move. They say, be thou removed, and it moves. These are not formulas reserved for prophets, they are demonstrations of law. The law of life responds to declaration. For declaration is the recognition of truth. Every soul is endowed with this authority, and every soul that speaks it finds results according to faith. To live in declaration is to shift the entire foundation of thought. One no longer measures life by appearances but by truth. One no longer speaks of what seems but of what is. To the world, this may appear as denial of reality, but it is in fact affirmation of a higher reality. Appearances change, truth does not. To declare truth is to give it form in the visible. Supplication binds one to the changing shadows. Declaration anchors one in the eternal substance. Speaking from possession, not lack, is the secret of drawing abundance into visible expression. The universe does not answer to the voice of want, but to the voice of fulfillment. To speak as though one were already supplied is to affirm the truth that supply is ever present, awaiting recognition. To speak as though one were still lacking is to deny that truth and to impress lack upon the subconscious mind. The words, I have, carry a vibration of authority and certainty. The words, I wish I had, or I hope I may, carry a vibration of distance and delay. The law of life mirrors the vibration it receives, so the language of possession brings possession, while the language of lack brings lack. The principle is simple yet profound. A seed planted in the ground does not wait for the sprout before declaring itself wheat. Its very nature is already complete within, and the soil only brings it into visibility. In the same way, when one speaks from possession, he is aligning with the complete pattern of abundance already present in the unseen. He is not trying to create something new. He is declaring what is eternally true. This recognition allows the invisible to become visible, for the subconscious mind accepts the declaration as fact and sets into motion the chain of events that reveal it. When one says, I am rich in every good and perfect gift, even though the purse may appear empty, he is not lying but declaring the higher reality that precedes appearances. Appearances are but the shadow of past beliefs, while words of possession shape the future. To speak from lack is to bind oneself to the shadows of yesterday. To speak from possession is to call forth the dawn of tomorrow. The words do not describe, they decree. They do not echo what is seen, they summon what is unseen. To speak from possession requires courage, for the outer world may contradict. The timid soul says, how can I declare abundance when I see only lack? Yet this is the very essence of the law to call forth what is not yet seen as though it were. The gardener does not despair when his field shows only bare soil. He declares that harvest is already his, for he knows the process is faithful. The one who speaks from possession does the same. He refuses to be swayed by appearances and holds fast to the truth that supply is already his. His words do not beg, plead, or question, they affirm, establish, and command. This practice is not about denial but about deeper affirmation. To deny lack does not mean to ignore appearances, but to refuse them final authority. To affirm possession is to give authority to the higher law of supply. Lack is a temporary shadow, possession is eternal truth. When the soul chooses to speak from truth rather than shadow, the shadow must dissolve. Words of possession are rays of light that scatter the darkness of want. They shift the entire atmosphere of consciousness, from hunger to satisfaction, from waiting to receiving, from fear to faith. The subconscious mind accepts words without argument, whether they are words of lack or words of possession. It takes them as orders and works day and night to bring them into form. Thus, to continually say, I never have enough, or I am always in debt, is to command the subconscious to maintain that state. To continually say, I am abundantly supplied, or wealth flows to me freely, is to command the subconscious to produce that reality. Speaking from possession programs the inner mind with the vibration of plenty, and once the inner is aligned, the outer must follow. One of the greatest errors is to wait for possession before speaking it. This is like waiting for the reflection to smile before smiling at the mirror. The reflection always follows the face, the outer always follows the inner. To wait is to delay, to declare is to hasten. The soul must speak first, and life will echo back the word. The floodgates of wealth are opened by the key of possession spoken in advance, not by the sighs of lack spoken in despair. Speaking from possession also carries with it the energy of gratitude. To say, I have, is to acknowledge the gift already present, even if only in the invisible. Gratitude multiplies what it touches. The thankful heart opens channels for greater inflow. The ungrateful heart, forever lamenting what is not yet seen, shuts the very channels it longs to open. Thus, to speak from possession is to speak in gratitude, and gratitude is the magnet of supply. This practice reshapes thought, emotion, and action. When one continually declares possession, the mind begins to expect good at every turn. The emotions shift from anxiety to calm assurance. Actions become bolder, more confident, aligned with success rather than fear. Opportunities that once seemed invisible begin to appear, for the eyes now see through the lens of abundance. Speaking from possession creates a vibration that attracts corresponding forms, drawing to the speaker people, circumstances, and resources that match the inner declaration. The world often teaches the opposite, urging souls to focus on what is missing, to complain of what is absent, to justify fear with appearances. Yet this path only strengthens the chains of lack. To break free requires a reversal, to speak not of what is missing, but of what is already present in the unseen. This reversal may feel unnatural at first, for habit pulls toward the language of want. But with persistence, the new language becomes natural, and the soul begins to breathe in the atmosphere of abundance as easily as air. The shift from lack to possession is also a shift from begging to authority. When one begs, he places himself below, as though supply were distant and reluctant. When one declares possession, he stands as heir, recognizing his unity with the source. This shift changes the posture of the soul, lifting it from fear to faith, from weakness to strength. The one who speaks from possession does not tremble before life, he commands life. He does not wait for doors to open. He walks as though they already are, and they yield to his step. Every word spoken is a seed, and the harvest depends on whether the seed is lack or possession. A field sown with lack can only yield want. A field sown with possession must yield plenty. The lips are the sower and the world is the field. Day by day, word by word, the crop is determined. To sow possession continually is to guarantee a harvest of abundance. The law is exact, and it cannot fail. Doors open through fearless words because fear closes every path and faith-filled speech clears them. Fearful words are vibrations of resistance. They declare obstacles, they emphasize impossibility, and they paint pictures of defeat upon the canvas of life. When the lips speak fear, the mind is enslaved by limitation, and the subconscious is programmed to expect barriers. But fearless words carry a current that dissolves resistance. They are the voice of courage, they are the command of truth, and they align with the great law of freedom. Fearless words are not careless. They are not reckless. They are words that know their power and stand upon eternal law rather than shifting appearances. When one says with conviction, "Every door I need is open now," he is not asking for doors to open, he is declaring their openness. This declaration sends forth a vibration that creates alignment in the unseen. The energy of fear might see a door closed and sigh, "I can never enter." But fearless words say, "This door is open for me." And in that vibration, channels are created, helpers appear, ideas arise, and ways are made where there seem to be none. The door itself is often a symbol, for it may be a person's favor, an opportunity, an idea, a chance encounter. All are responsive to fearless speech, because fearless speech carries authority, and life is compelled to obey authority spoken with faith. Fear binds, fear blocks, fear delays. Fearless words break, open and hasten. The soul that trembles speaks contradictions. "I want success, but I am afraid I will fail." This sends two commands to the subconscious, and the stronger usually the fear takes root. The soul that speaks fearlessly says, "Success is mine, and failure has no place," and such a command allows no resistance. Life mirrors courage. Fear is weakness in the unseen, but courage is strength that shifts circumstances. Doors are never closed permanently, they appear closed only to the fearful. The fearless see them swing open, often in ways that astonish, for the law loves to demonstrate through surprise. Every word is a decree, and the tone of that decree matters. A trembling voice carries little power, but a calm, fearless voice cuts through barriers like a sword. It is not the volume of speech but the certainty within it. One may whisper, "I walk into open doors now," And if the whisper is filled with fearless conviction, the decree is as powerful as a shout. The vibration of fearlessness carries within it the energy of freedom. It says, "Nothing can stand against me, because I align with divine order." Such words shift the inner atmosphere first. And when the inner atmosphere is fearless, the outer world rearranges itself to match. Fearless words are rooted in the recognition that supply, opportunity, and favor are infinite. Fear believes in scarcity, it believes doors are few and guarded. Fearless words affirm that doors are limitless, and each one opens in its perfect time. This recognition removes desperation, which is a form of fear. The desperate chase doors and beat upon them with anxious fists, only to find them shut. The fearless walk steadily, speaking calmly. Every good door is open to me now, and the right doors yield with ease. Desperation is pushing, fearlessness is flowing. Life opens to flow, not to strain. Children often embody this principle without knowing. They walk with fearless words, declaring what is theirs, expecting the world to provide. A child says, "This is mine," with no thought of impossibility, and often it appears. The adult, taught fear and doubt, says, "I do not deserve it, I may not receive it," and closes the door with his own lips. To regain childlike fearlessness is to return to natural authority. The soul that speaks fearlessly stands as a child of the infinite, knowing no good thing can be withheld. This state is not arrogance but innocence restored, the pure confidence that the universe is friendly and supply is certain. Fearless words also dissolve opposition in others. A man who speaks fearfully attracts resistance, for others sense weakness and doubt. A man who speaks fearlessly attracts cooperation, for others sense strength and certainty. Words carry vibration that reaches beyond sound, they impress minds, they shift atmospheres, they awaken responses. A declaration such as, "This path is open for me," can soften the hardest hearts, turn suspicion into favor, and transform rejection into welcome. It is not manipulation, but alignment with law. Life flows toward courage and withdraws from fear. Fearless speech is contagious. When spoken often, it not only clears one's own path, but lifts others. In an environment of fear, one voice declaring boldly, "We are safe, we are provided for, we are victorious," can shift the vibration of the whole. Families, groups, even nations can be lifted by fearless declarations. Fear multiplies quickly when spoken, but so does courage. Every fearless word is a torch in the dark, lighting the way for others. When the lips speak courage, the heart grows stronger, and others around feel it and rise. Speaking fearlessly also reconditions the inner self. Many carry old memories of defeat or rejection, and their speech echoes those shadows. But each fearless declaration cuts new grooves in the subconscious. To say daily, "Doors of wealth and favor are open to me now," is to overwrite the old records of lack and rejection. In time, the subconscious accepts fearlessness as the new law, and outer life shifts accordingly. It is not enough to think courage, it must be spoken. Thought shapes within, but spoken word imprints deeply, carrying sound, vibration, and conviction into the invisible. Fearless words must also be consistent. One cannot speak boldly today, and then undo it tomorrow with fearful complaints. To say, "All doors are open," and then mutter, "Nothing ever works for me," is to cancel the decree. The flood of supply is held back by such contradictions. Consistency establishes the pattern, and once the pattern is set, life cannot resist mirroring it. The soul that watches his words carefully, allowing no fearful contradiction to pass his lips, soon lives in a world where doors swing open continually. There is also a joy that comes with fearless words. Fear weighs the spirit with heaviness, but courage lifts it with lightness. To declare boldly, "I walk in wide open spaces," is to breathe freedom even before the manifestation appears. This joy itself is magnetic, attracting opportunities, for joy is the fragrance of fearless faith. Many doors open not because of strategy or force, but because of the atmosphere carried by the fearless soul. His words radiate confidence and joy, and doors cannot resist opening to such energy. Infinite supply flows into form, because the nature of life is unending abundance. The universe is not a closed system of limited portions to be divided among the deserving and undeserving. It is an inexhaustible wellspring that renews itself endlessly. Just as the ocean does not fear depletion when countless waves rise upon its surface, supply does not diminish when it pours itself into form. The same substance that formed galaxies, stars, and worlds is the substance that shapes prosperity, opportunities, ideas, and blessings. To understand this truth is to release fear, for fear believes in scarcity while truth reveals the endlessness of supply. Infinite supply waits only for recognition, and recognition is given through thought, word, and expectation. The unseen is the reservoir from which all visible form arises. Ideas are born in silence before they are spoken, buildings exist in imagination before they are built. Inventions appear in mind before they take shape in matter. This same law governs abundance. Wealth is present in the invisible before it shows in the visible. Infinite supply is the raw substance of creation, moving ceaselessly, pressing against the walls of thought, ready to clothe itself in whatever mold consciousness provides. When one molds with fear and limitation, the flow into form is restricted, appearing as lack. When one molds with faith, gratitude, and certainty, the flow is unhindered, and supply appears in overflowing measure. The river does not ask permission to flow, it follows its channel naturally. Infinite supply flows in the same way, seeking channels through which it may express. Consciousness provides the channel, and words deepen or narrow its course. A narrow channel of fearful thought allows only a trickle, a wide channel of fearless declaration allows a flood. The supply itself is not limited, only the channel determines how much may be seen. To say, "There is never enough," is to narrow the channel. To say, "There is infinite supply for me now," is to widen it. The law responds not to wishful longing but to clear recognition. Nature itself demonstrates the principle. The tree does not ration its leaves, the flowers do not count their petals sparingly. The stars are not placed in small numbers, nor does the sky withhold its light. Everywhere in creation is the stamp of abundance. Scarcity is not natural. It is an illusion formed by restricted thought. Infinite supply is the law of life as natural as breath. One inhales, and there is always more air for the next breath. One drinks from a spring, and the water continues to flow. Supply is not exhausted by use, it increases in circulation. When wealth is allowed to flow freely, it multiplies. When hoarded in fear, it stagnates. The law of life is movement, and movement ensures increase. Supply flows into form through expectation. The one who expects little receives little, not because supply is small, but because he has formed only a small vessel. The one who expects much receives much, for he has prepared a greater vessel. Expectation is faith in motion, and faith is the magnet that draws unseen supply into visible channels. To live in continual expectancy is to live in the certainty that doors will open, ways will be made, and blessings will appear. Infinite supply cannot flow into an atmosphere of doubt, for doubt is a closed vessel. It cannot flow into fear, for fear is a broken vessel. It flows naturally into faith, for faith is an open vessel waiting to be filled. Infinite supply takes on form in endless ways. It may appear as money, but it may also appear as new ideas, creative inspiration, healing strength, opportunities, relationships, or resources. It always takes the form most suited to the need. Sometimes it arrives through channels expected, and other times through means that astonish. It is never confined to one source, one person, or one method. To say, "My supply comes only through this job, this person, or this path," is to limit the infinite. To say, "My supply is infinite, and it comes through many channels," is to allow freedom. The form is flexible, the substance is eternal. The practice of opening to infinite supply requires a shift of consciousness from ownership to stewardship. Ownership clutches and fears loss. Stewardship receives and circulates, knowing the source is inexhaustible. The steward recognizes that he is not the origin of supply, but the channel through which it flows. This realization frees him from anxiety, for he no longer depends upon his own effort alone, but upon the infinite stream that supports all. Effort is still made, but it is guided, energized, and multiplied by the flow of supply. To live as steward is to live in trust, confidence, and peace. Gratitude is the magnet that draws more of this supply into visible form. To give thanks for what is seen and unseen is to recognize the infinite already present. Gratitude says, I have, and this recognition widens the channel. Complaining says, I lack, and this narrows the channel. The grateful soul finds increase everywhere, for his recognition calls it forth. The ungrateful soul finds decrease, for his blindness shuts the flow. Infinite supply does not cease, it is only the individual channel that determines whether it is visible or hidden. Gratitude polishes the channel until it shines, and the flow rushes through without hindrance. Infinite supply also flows in proportion to courage. Fear is resistance, courage is release. To step boldly into action, trusting that supply will meet the need, is to set the law in motion. Many wait for visible proof before moving, and in waiting they delay the flow. Those who act with faith, declaring, supply is here now, find doors opening as they walk. The act of courage is itself a signal to the universe, and the universe responds with corresponding flow. Infinite supply is attracted to courage because courage mirrors its own expansive nature. To understand infinite supply is to dissolve envy and competition. Envy believes another's gain is one's own loss, but in truth, the supply is without measure. Competition believes resources are limited, but in truth the field is boundless. Infinite supply means each soul has his own portion, and no one can take what is divinely his. The recognition of this truth frees the mind from bitterness, fear, and rivalry. Instead of striving against others, the soul aligns with the stream of supply and finds his own channels opening with ease. Infinite supply ensures there is always enough for all, and more than enough. The more one aligns with this truth, the more naturally wealth flows in visible ways. The practice is simple yet requires faith, to speak continually of abundance, to expect continually the flow, to give thanks continually for what is present and what is coming. Each word, each thought, each feeling is a mold for the substance of supply to fill. The molds of doubt are small and cracked. The molds of faith are vast and strong. Infinite supply fills whichever mold is given. To enlarge the mold is to enlarge the form.